with that, I did ask each of the women, I do try, I said earlier that I want to understand people's superpower. You need to know more than people's title. We bring our whole selves. So actually, these two played along with me very well. So I think it's going to be phenomenal talk. So I'm going to bring up Diana Kelley from Microsoft, who said her superpower is being the dog whisperer. She can absolutely translate at home. That's right. And Lisa Lorenzin from Zscaler, who had a few for sure. But I'm going to go with what she said is that she's a rainmaker. No, it's not that she's not humble in the least, but what she means by this is that whenever it's time to get out rock climbing and outside of the house, she makes it rain. So the two of them are going to talk today about the growing challenges in the cybersecurity space.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. We're very excited to talk to you. And Lisa, I was wondering if you'd just kick us off about, as we were, we have an actual fire, which is
beautiful.
Nice. If you could kick us off as we were thinking about what we wanted to talk about, why you got interested in the topic that we went down, which is that life moves pretty fast and cybersecurity has to move even faster.
Absolutely. So in my own life, I've had a lot of changes in my career and my approach to cybersecurity. And I didn't start out doing cybersecurity at all. I have an undergraduate degree in medieval and Renaissance studies. So living proof that you don't have to have a technical background to succeed in tech. But I've bounced through a series of web developer, server administrator, web server security, network security, more general enterprise security. And what I've learned along the way is one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with this topic is that it's ever changing. The goals change, the challenges change, the tools change, the threat models change. And I think that the way that we approach cybersecurity in how we teach it and how we talk about it has to keep up. So that's what really interests me about that topic. What about you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And also, I was an English major. So I fell in love with computing when I was a teen, but I actually went to school for English. And I've never felt like that was a negative in my career, actually, in IT and cyber, because you do have to keep learning. I mean, there's a good baseline.
Yes.
Sometimes people that say, oh, everything changes every day make me a little frustrated because we have things. If you understand how TCP/IP works, how routing works, how DNS works, you have a good, solid base. But you still have to keep up every single day and keep educating yourself. So what I studied in school 30 plus years ago, doesn't have a whole lot of currency, wouldn't have a whole lot of currency now anyway. My Fortran programming skills probably wouldn't help me today. So.
Oh, sure. And when we talk about the speed of change, one of the biggest changes over the last few years is the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah.
And the changes that brings to the field of security. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on both the benefits of AI and ML, but also some of the challenges there.
Yeah. I mean, looking at so I think that overall AI and machine learning are without a doubt our friends. They're really, if you think about the vast amount of data that we're generating now, it's just overwhelming. I mean, computers kind of, in a sense, got us into this situation of we have so much data we have to sift through, and computers are going to be, I think, what helps us to get out of it. Because what's amazing at pattern matching? Computers. I mean, they really, really excel at that. So it's fantastic that as we look for patterns, we look for trends within massive, massive lakes of data, that we've got machine learning. And we've seen really positive benefits from machine learning, like identifying activity or behavior that's really anomalous and not acceptable that might not have been, you couldn't have just found with older school sort of grep, just match this string to another string, and we know exactly what we've got. So machine learning has really helped move us forward. But anytime you look at technology, and even the original attack tools, I don't know if you remember like years ago, but when I was a network admin, I started out the first network I adminned, I was a Novell admin. Any Novell fans here? Any Novell admins former Novell?
That goes back.
Yeah, all right, Catherine. Our net monitoring tools were actually, we got horrified because we found out, attackers are using them because they're trying to monitor our network.
Right.
And that happens again and again, is that you see as the defenders come up and create really good and interesting technology, the attackers either find ways or try to find ways to misuse them. And so there have been, looking across what attackers are doing, they are trying to perturb things like the machine learning models. So they are already trying to train them that activity that's anomalous or malicious is normalized. So, we do, I think as an industry, we have to understand that this is amazing new technology that we need, but the attackers are also going to be, using it too.
And
So-
it's not just an external threat. AI or machine learning can also amplify inherent bias in a way that if you have a data set that only reflects one perspective, then the answer you're going to get out of that data set is not necessarily going to reflect the reality of a more complex environment. Or, as you say, there can be malicious introduction of bad data, but there can also just be misinterpretation of existing data. And especially if we don't know how a conclusion was reached to begin with, it's really hard to interrogate that process and figure out how to tune it to get something that's not going to lead us down the wrong path.
It's so true. And thinking about how organizations are starting to use machine learning and more AI, looking at the impacts, the change of the impacts of when damage is done in IT, in cyber, what's changing now? What's different now versus 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think that we've seen a lot more visible cyber threats. And part of that is just our interconnectedness. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if somebody got breached, it wasn't necessarily the first thing that we all woke up and read about on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. And also, the digital world has invaded so much of our workplace, so much of our personal lives. So everything that we touch is now subject to these challenges. I think that the rise of cyber threats is also in part due to the fact that we're in some areas clinging to an old approach to solving these problems and not necessarily recognizing that the landscape has changed so much that our approaches to the solutions need to change as well.
Yeah, I sometimes think of it as like scale and scope.
Yes.
Because when I was first getting started, we thought the worst thing that could happen was somebody got onto our mail server and we couldn't send mail. And then, as I progressed in my career, we saw more financial services activity online. It was, someone's going to steal the money. And now it's truly what can go wrong can impact human lives. Whether it's healthcare devices that are attacked. We saw this with WannaCry, where there was an issue in NHS. Some people couldn't have surgery. And the scope of where software is in our lives, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So thinking about even a car, when you step on, depending on how old your car is, when you step on the brake, that's probably not a physical brake. It's very likely that that's almost like a game controller, and you're hitting a pedal that's actually communicating through software to the car to brake. So not getting that code right, the impact of that is just so, thinking back to, somebody gets into the banks. I mean, obviously nobody wants to lose all their money, but I feel about having my money stolen versus having the car I'm driving not be able to brake when I put my foot on the pedal, or somebody steering it maliciously for me, very different kinds of
Yeah, I remember when I
balance.
first started learning about industrial control systems, the idea of a digital process controlling a physical event was very removed from my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
This happens in a wastewater treatment plant or a nuclear power plant. It doesn't happen in my house. And now it's in the cars we drive, it's in our air conditioning systems. I carry a phone in my pocket that I can touch many different places in the world.
Yeah.
And it's just become ubiquitous. So I think that our attack surface has increased simply because our contact with digital and cyber-related activity has increased.
Do you think as the attack surface increases that we're getting better from what as security experts, what can we do to help the industry? I pivoted a few years ago to really focus on the software development lifecycle because I realized no matter what I did, I started out as a network guy, and I realized no matter what I did down at the lower layers, it was still layer 7 that was giving me all the trouble. So
Or
I got
layer
really
8.
interested in, so for that, the cyber threats getting worse, that scale and scope was like, well, let's actually get to the software development lifecycle. I'm wondering what you're seeing that you're doing that.
For me, my journey was really from, I spent the last 5 years at my previous employers. If anybody said cloud to me, I said go away. Because as far as I was concerned, a cloud was just a rack that you couldn't reboot. And it had all the same problems that you had in the data center, except that they were at a remove, and so people thought that they weren't our problems anymore.
Right.
And what I had to learn, kind of painfully, is that is one approach to cloud. But if you actually look at the cloud services that are available today, what they've done for application delivery in the terms of software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, we can also leverage the same kind of technology to deliver security as a service. And so if you start to think about, if we assume a world of cloud and mobility, and we design security solutions with that assumption, rather than taking security solutions that were designed for the world that I grew up in, where we had a flat network and a fat firewall at the edge of the network, and everybody from the outside came in through that one ingress point. If instead we look at how things exist today, the distributed nature and the ability to use different devices, be in different locations, be in different roles, then I think that we can start to tackle that problem, because we're meeting that problem where it lives and not trying to bolt things onto it that were designed for a different environment.
Right. Security by design, privacy by design.
Yes.
Yep.
And privacy by design is a critical aspect of that. I mean, I think one of the challenges is that our technology has really outstripped our policy and our governance ability to keep up with it. And I'm wondering what you think about the prospects for tackling that, for giving people a little more control, for fixing that imbalance.
Yeah, it's, I hope that we work more towards getting technical people involved in policy writing and policy decisions. If you look at some of the older policies, even like the original versions of HIPAA, when there was doing that when they were going through the comment cycles, and so going back to something that's fairly old, like HIPAA. That it was kind of clear that there was wishful thinking of what we could accomplish by policy, and maybe not always understanding what's technically, what you can technically do. So it would be great if we could have this magical, yes, everybody gets to keep all their data private when they want it, and they can remove, but it's not always possible to envision what's capable from a policy perspective and match it with the technical. So we want to have the technical people, I think, really involved so that they can actually at least inform the policy with, this is something that's doable, or it's doable in a certain time frame that's reasonable. Another example was one of the early versions of PCI DSS had a hard limit, I believe it was 30 days on patching. And you were just talking about things like ICS, and if you work in healthcare and ICS, you know that you can't always patch all your systems. In fact, sometimes in ICS, if you patch a system, it's no longer certified.
Yes.
So it's no longer a building automation system. So I hope that as we are continuing to look at additional policies around the globe, especially the privacy policies, things like GDPR and CCPA, that we bring more technology people into the conversation so that we can have something that's implementable in a reasonable manner, in addition to bringing forward really good regulations.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that regulation is the answer there.
Okay,
Because
fair.
part of the challenge is, I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a health insurance organization in North Carolina. And you mentioned HIPAA. In the United States, we have the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, and it allows, in theory, some level of patient control over their own data. In practice, if you run a firewall and you need to have a partnership with another vendor that's subject to HIPAA, what you get is, well, you have to do this because that's how we do HIPAA. And we say, well, no, we do this other thing because that's how we do HIPAA. And you're both right, because that standard was not specified in such a way to make it clear what you had to do. So it was so open at interpretation. Then you fast forward 20 mumble years, and now you've got the GDPR. And as far as I can tell, the primary effect of GDPR is that I have to accept cookies explicitly on every website that I go to now. But I'm not entirely sure that it's changed any significant level of privacy on my part, or done anything other than make it harder for small companies to meet some of these requirements that larger companies may have more resources to meet. So I agree that we need to have some way of enforcing and protecting end user privacy, but I would almost rather see the tools give people more choice and the ecosystem be built to have technology that supports that, because from a regulatory standpoint, we've taken several whacks at this, and I'm not sure that any of them have been super effective in what I actually care about on that front.
Yeah, regulations can be tough because you go between being very prescriptive, and then sometimes it's very hard to technically actually apply it because it's prescriptive for one use case, right?
Sure,
And very
it's
and companies are
overspecified.
versus just being too vague so that it kind of doesn't matter. Like there's been some argument that a lot of GDPR will ultimately decide what technically needs to be done once case law is brought against violations. So
That's a terrible way to make policy.
well, yeah, it is.
I hear you.
Do you know what a farrier is?
Is that person who makes horseshoes?
It is.
Yay.
It is. So how many people out here knew what a farrier is? Just a few. Catherine again. Just a few hands up. Okay. So the the reason I ask about that is that actually used to be a very, very popular job
Okay.
because everybody was driving horses, and so of course the people needed to the horses needed to have their hooves shoed to be able to go out safely on the streets. But this is not really a career path for many people these days.
Sure.
Given the amount of change that's going on in the industry, what are your thoughts on how people can stay current and skill up for the next generation of cyber jobs?
So remember where I mentioned that I said that cloud was all just something I didn't care about? I've had to go through that process over the last few years, and it's painful. I mean, I could tell you anything about how to use a firewall to protect a data center, but that information is still valid and useful, but it's no longer sufficient. So I think that what organizations need to do is to look at their personnel and their talents and their interests and figure out how to give people the ability to expand those skills without denigrating the really valid knowledge that we've spent decades, in some cases, building up. I see organizations go in and say, we're going to get rid of all of this technology and we're just going to drop something new on your head. And the older and the more mature that security group is, the more resistance you're going to see. Whereas if you go in and say, we're going to take the goals that you're trying to accomplish and we're going to educate you in a better way or an easier way or less expensive or a less complex way to accomplish those goals. And we're going to allow you to build on the skills you already have, but learn how to apply them to new technology, learn how to apply them in a new environment. We bring people along. You can't just say, your job doesn't exist anymore, learn or die. We have to say, we value all the things that you already know, and we're going to help you learn to apply them in a new arena. And I think that's where a lot of the resistance to change comes from in an institution. At the top level, it may be about cost or risk, but at the hands-on level, it's about, I know one thing, and I know it really well, and if that thing isn't relevant anymore, what does that mean for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Being open. I also was very, very anti-cloud for years because as a former network admin, I was convinced no one's going to protect my data as well as I can. There's no way I'm handing it over to somebody in the cloud. But over time, I actually did a complete 180 to now I'm a big proponent of we actually can be more secure in the cloud, not just because you get the economies of scale of the cloud provider knows how to build strong data centers. When you're building data centers around the globe, you understand the physically how to build them, how to hire for them, how to manage them. That's the kind of thing that if each company had to build that themselves, that really becomes very cost prohibitive. So continuing to learn, I think, and to keep an open mind can really help to skill up for the next thing and to look at what your passion is for the next, whatever. There's a lot going on in technology. You've heard a lot of different viewpoints today. Right now there's a lot of talk about AI and ML and data science and more of the cloud technologies and digital transformation. Anything that kind of sparks a real interest in you and you think, ooh, I want to learn more about that. Figure out how to learn more about that and start talking to at your organization saying, this is where I want to begin to focus. I mean, I had mentioned I had gotten into the software development, secure software development lifecycle, and that was something, I saw there was a need, I saw it was a problem, and I hadn't coded and written any code for a decade. But I had to dive right back in and reskill myself so that I could be ready for the next. So yeah, I would definitely say stay alert.
Absolutely. And I think that also ties directly in with diversity and inclusivity in cybersecurity. because at the same time we're taking people who are already in the industry and helping them adapt to the changes in the industry, we also have an opportunity to bring people in from a different background with a different perspective and put them side by side with the this is how we've always done it. So now we have a new approach, we have existing knowledge, and those two can be much stronger together than each of those individuals would be. You have the experienced person mentoring someone who either is newer to the industry or comes from a different background, and then you have the newer person bringing in fresh ideas and not just saying, oh, well, you know, we tried that 20 years ago and it didn't work, so therefore it's off the table forever.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we had when I was at IBM, we got trained on how to use LinkedIn and how to be effective at LinkedIn. And you know, there's this like 20-something who's like schooling me on LinkedIn, and a little part of me was like, well, I don't know about this, but boy, did I learn a lot from that team and really change the way I was able to engage with other people and help to spread, you know, word about cybersecurity. So it's true, you know, diversity and knowing that, yeah, sometimes people a lot younger than you happen to know more about this.
So I think we're pretty close to running out of time. If you had one message that you would give to people either trying to expand their skills in cybersecurity or trying to move into the cybersecurity field, what would it be?
I would say follow your why. Follow your what's really driving you in the morning. Why are you doing it? Follow your why, because when you follow your why, you're so excited about it that you tend to spend a lot of time focusing on it. You put energy there, and when you put energy there, any energy someplace, you're very often successful. How about you?
I would follow that and take it a step further and say, go for things that you're not qualified for. Every job that I've had, probably across my entire career, has involved someone taking a chance on me to do something that I didn't have the background for on paper. But I said, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to do the grunt work. If you will let me tackle this, I will give you value in your organization. And so first of all, be willing to go and put yourself out there. Look for things based on your talents, not just on your resume. And then if you're a hiring manager or somebody better established in the industry, hire those people. Find someone who's trying to move laterally or trying to join the industry and mentor them and be a network effect for them. And I think that helps us all.
Great advice.
Cool.
I really love talking to you. This
Likewise.
has been wonderful.
I'm so glad we got a chance to do this.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Diana.
everyone.